Hello and welcome to Adapt Radio. My name is Claire O'Connell and today we are talking about deepfakes and elections.
From the Adapt Centre at Trinity College, this is Adapt Radio, presenting groundbreaking innovations, one conversation at a time.
Now, can you believe everything you see and hear online? Undoubtedly not. And even the most astute of us can be taken in by disinformation in the form of deepfakes. Add to that the heightened tensions and underlying agendas of elections, and it's a pretty corrosive mix. So how can we take the power away from deepfakes in election season? Joining us today to talk about this is Adapt researcher Dipto Barman, who has just finished his PhD at Trinity College Dublin under the supervision of Professor Owen Conlon and Professor Jane Souter at DCU. Dipto, you are very welcome to the programme.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So deepfakes, even the name is creepy. What are they?
So talking about deepfakes, I think they're nothing but synthetic media. And that could be speech, that could be images or videos, in which a person in an existing image or a video is replaced with someone else's likenesses. And this particularly is achieved through the buzzwords of the day, which is AI and machine learning. The primary technology, what really powers this deepfake, it's called the generative adversarial networks, or GANs. And the idea is that it consists of two neural networks. So that's the basis. The neural networks is something that is inspired by the human brain and structure. The idea is it learns and adapts, adjusting the strength. So think about the first time you walked. You didn't know what you have to do. You just knew you had to go there. So you took the steps and you failed sometimes. But the next time you did, you took those ideas into account while walking next time, right? So that's about adjusting the strength or the experience, which is the data. Now, similarly, that's what the neural network does. It really has two neural networks. The first one is called the generator. The idea is that it will generate fake images or videos. At the start, it's similar like walking. It will start randomly. Just random noise, some pixelated stuff. But what happens is after some time, it starts to get better. And this is done by the second system, which is there. It's called the discriminators. That system's job is to distinguish between real and fake. It creates something, the discriminator, oh, this is fake. Then it goes back, tells it, oh, you need to improve this, creates the second one. So this happens a lot of time, millions and millions of time.
Oh, so it's fine tuning all the time.
That's correct. And that's what gets at the end. That's what creates the final deep fake.
So the end result looks very polished then to the human eye, and it's very difficult for us to see that it's a fake. I remember a while back, there was this whole sort of like spate of videos coming out where celebrities, their images were being used to create deepfakes. And even at the time, those looked quite convincing, even though you knew, oh, well, that celebrity would never say that. But if you didn't know that, you would have thought they were actually saying it. What has happened since then? How good have these things become?
So this all started, I think the idea of deepfakes, we need to think of this as a technology. And it has the good sides. Now, good sides are something in the lines of you can create the lip movements for different dialects. So I speak in English, but if somebody here was watching me and wanted to hear me in Hindi, let's say, for a native person in India, the lips would change, the movements would change. So that's where deepfake can come into the picture. That's the positive side of things. If you look at big production companies like Fast X, the Fast and Furious, Paul Walker unfortunately died, but his face was swapped, right? Because that's what the meaning of the movie was. So that's what deepfake really does at that level. But now what's happening is the computational power of doing all of this has become very accessible, right? If I go to online and I search Midjourney, which is nothing but an image generator, right? It does a similar kind of a thing. And I type a prompt and I get an image which looks really, really close to what humans look like. One of the famous examples was the buff jacket image of the Pope.
Yes.
That is an example of what the computational power of things have become. And it's so accessible. That's kind of the key here, that it's accessible to everyone.
And can you give us some examples of where this kind of technology has been used, not for good, but for disinformation, and used to manipulate public opinion, what people think? So
in the current situation, I think I've seen a couple of videos that have greatly adversed in political situations, particularly the Israel war. The president saying something which he didn't really mean, taken out of context, adding an extra word. Even in the Bangladesh, currently, the whole thing happened with the prime minister having to flee the country. There were certain videos which were placed in which the prime minister of Bangladesh said that, oh, all people who are asking for reservations, they're all belonging to, they're all traitors for the country, where she did not say all of this. So these things were in the public, and I'm not saying that everybody gets affected. It's only one section. I think those people who are really looking for those things, who really hate the emotional drivability, that's what the trigger point of deepfakes really help out.
But does it have a broader effect on everybody's perception, in that we all know we have to be careful with what we pick up online? But if you start to mistrust everything you see online, then that's its own problem, isn't it?
That's very true. So I think it's all about understanding what is the balance here, right? Because the social media or any internet, it's a podium for truth. It's a podium for free speech, right? You're allowed to say what you want to say, but it should not become the basis of truth. My opinion should not be the truth of the world, right? There is a grand truth. And I think people need to be careful or critically evaluate the information that comes through. Like we do a lot of research in human where we found misinformation. So if I just define what misinformation is, it's nothing but false information. Now, when I define disinformation is also false information, but the intention is definitely to deceive you, right? And that's what happens in a political situation when I want to deceive the other individual. So talking about deepfakes in this kind of a situation, there is a definite agenda for this deepfake. This video is created to persuade you against that political candidate or so. So I think people need to critically evaluate the statements that are coming up. I'm not saying that all the statement needs to be, but something that is related to health, security, the major pillars of society. I think those are the statements that really needs to be evaluated properly.
So we have this kind of misinformation, which can just be mistaken, or disinformation, which is intentionally wrong. It's placed there to make you think something that's not true. And as you say, in election time, that can be particularly problematic because people have agendas that they want to drive. How is research and how are centres like ADAPT helping to improve everyone's literacy around this misinformation and disinformation in deepfakes?
So talking about ADAPT in particular, I think there is a lot of research going around, particularly around misinformation and disinformation. The first aspect of understanding, the way I would divide all of this is there are actually, this whole process is the start is the source, who's creating the disinformation, who is spreading it. So what is the platform? So the digital service that's actually spreading it, and who's consuming it, the audience, right? So all of these three aspects itself become a topic area of research. Creation of disinformation, political agenda. Do you have a troll-like behavior? Do you have financial incentive, right? How you're creating it. Are you using AI-based? Are you using text-based? Are you creating a deepfake? Like, are you manipulating images, taking it out of a context, right, and pushing it on the social media? The second aspect is social media itself. You're putting it online. How many people are seeing it? How many people are sharing it, right? How many people are commenting it? Because social media as a whole, everything depends on the engagement. If something catches engagement, it's going to blow up, irrespective of it's true or not. If a tree falls down in a forest, nobody's going to hear it. But if it burns, everybody's going to know, right? It's all about that. And the third aspect is audience. So Adapt is working on all the three sides of things, from a technological aspect about how these algorithms, like I mentioned, GANs, how do they really create deepfakes? How this AI technology is implemented and can be used from a source side of things. What can we do to mitigate this from a technological side of things? From the audience perspective, I think a lot of research goes on understanding what the human really feels, or what makes a human susceptible. Is it user characteristics? Is it gender? Is it age? Is it social media use? Is it political ideology? Is it how cognitively active you are? So Adapt works on all of these fronts. I think that's the key bit here. So these things all combined provide a very, not only a granular, but an overview that all of the teams coordinate, and finally, they have a bigger picture to answer.
And you mentioned there looking to mitigate deepfakes by, using the same technology or similar technology maybe to detect. Can you tell me a little more about that? Because, the technology is agnostic. It's just technology. So how do you use AI against the AI of deepfakes?
Right. So the technical aspect of the first side could be AI-based detection algorithms. So we already know how they're trained. What we really do is we train a model that really looks at these small, unnatural facial movements. So till now, I think no model is being able to completely. So if you look at generation, the fingers always been intertwined, right? The fingers are weird. The shadows are inconsistent. So the physics of the world is not depicted properly. I think there are models that can actually look for these little things in videos. So what we do is, let's say, so a video is nothing but a movement of pictures. So what we do is we compare, the finger doesn't seem 4 here. It seems 7. That doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
right? So that flags. Now, the second side of things, so that's the AI based. The second side of things is we are not only improving the model generation process, but what if we can tag these models? What if the output itself is being tagged? So that is something we use called as blockchain technology. The idea is that they can be employed to verify the authenticity of digital media. Think of this as you as a person has uploaded something on Facebook. Now that goes on to everybody in this world. Now I need to trace back. So there is this small metadata or a key that can trace back to you. That's the use of blockchain. That's basically a watermark. And all these big Midjourney AI generators, everybody, they're all doing this little watermark kind of a system so that we can detect, this is fake. This is not real. So that's the blockchain side of things. And the third thing that they use is something called as a forensic tool. So there are lots of digital forensics tools which can analyze the compression of data. So because if we think about the real world, it's so full of details, so rich. That cannot be captured in just in a deep fake. It's not possible. So there is a lot of small compression that happens at a pixel level. So those forensic tools usually look for that.
Amazing. It's good to know that they can be picked up and traced. Do you think, is there a responsibility for the platforms that enable the spread of this misinformation and disinformation to, I suppose, create a response where potential deepfakes are identified as such automatically, or by other users who can maybe detect using the technology that you speak about, where they can come on and automatically tag something as this is a potential deep fake or an authenticated deep fake, if you want to say that. Is that a direction of travel for the technology platforms, do you think?
So I think, in my opinion, yes, that is strongly something that the digital platforms are they are doing, and they will have to do as EU and all of these big organizations put a hammer onto it, because they have the potential to topple governments. They have the potential to cause massive problems in a society, in a nation, in a society, in a bigger picture. So I think platforms themselves, first of all, I think they have to put a lot of research about how to stop of this. The second is, like, if you look at Twitter, now X, they have allowed users to actually comment on, so that's the community note kind of things.
That's right. Yes, which is very helpful in some cases. If you see something that looks like, oh, that's a great bargain, and somebody puts underneath, no, you know what, this is a scam site. You go, oh yeah.
I think it's more about a collaborative effort. I think digital platforms need to open us to researchers like us, because what they have is data. In order for us to train, in order for us to understand how things work at a massive scale, they would have to have a handshake with us. So I think that's kind of the direction I would think that digital platforms need to go in this space, at least.
So Dipto, I suppose, what I'm hearing from you is that deepfake technology it's becoming easier to spread disinformation on social media platforms and other digital platforms using that kind of technology. And as consumers on these platforms, maybe where we don't quite understand how the deepfakes are made, but we know they're there, what kind of things should we be aware of? What should we look out for, and what should we view critically?
So I think from something as a user and somebody who's used social media, I think anything that incite any of the negative emotions, hate, causes high emotional response, that is something that you'd really need to pay attention to. The problem with social media on this is we go to social media when we're relaxed. For example, you get an email, it's directed towards you, you look at it, you read the email, and you can figure out it's a spam or not, because it's directed towards you. The thing that happens with social media is you're scrolling. So you get past, you see something, it's back in your head, you scroll again, you see it again, and then your mind starts to think about, oh, maybe something is happening here. And then something, let's say, you're very connected to, right? Maybe that's a characteristics of you. Maybe you're a mother or you're a parent and you see something that is not right from a parenthood kind of a thing. So those things kind of affect you emotionally. So your body kind of gives an emotional response. That's very natural. I think that's where somebody, whoever it is, anybody who gets an emotional response to content on social media, they need to sit down, think about it, reevaluate, and then respond. Just take a moment, because if you do that, you're solving half of the problem of misinformation. Half of the problem, it's just gone, because now you're not affected by it. You can search online. The only thing is we don't go to fact checker website all the time. I don't think anybody goes there. So I think people need to take that extra step. If something is emotionally disturbing, people need to take that extra step towards clearing their doubts that, okay, maybe this is wrong, and then present it. I think that's one of the key things that people need to be aware of. The second thing is, so in research, we found that people who are not cognitively active, right, on social media, they are more susceptible to fake news. They're more susceptible to the deep fakes. It's because your mind is at ease. You're not standing with your guards up. And it's natural. You should not be always on God's up when you're, on the phone viewing a video of puppies and cats, and then suddenly it walks up. So I think whenever, getting back to that emotionally charged thing, I think emotion really drives susceptibility. That's what we found in my research. We also found that political ideology, people who are very stringent with their opinions, right? So, for example, if I believe that somebody killed somebody and I really hate that person, I will start to make all sort of connections because I want to prove my point is correct. That's called the confirmation bias. I want my idea to be correct. Nobody wants to be wrong in this world. Everybody wants to be right. So I think subtle cues of not only subtle cues, right? You don't have to say, oh, you are wrong. You don't know anything. There are just ways of saying things. Oh, maybe you should have looked at this. Maybe you should have looked at this, and let the person explore. So I think it's also an ideological thing. It's also emotionally challenging. It's also cognitively active, and so on. So I think that's kind of the tips I would think.
Yeah, that's really good. So if you're scrolling and something hits you right in the emotions, particularly if those emotions are negative or they make you bring about feelings that you're not comfortable with, then rather than hitting share or reply or whatever straight away, stop and step away for a little while, have a think, say, what if that's not real? That's really good advice for us all. And I suppose finally, Dipto, just maybe to end on a more positive note, about how this kind of deep fake technology, and it's not really a nice name, but the technology, as you mentioned earlier, can actually be used for very constructive things. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what you see in the future there, how this kind of AI is going to be able to help people be more constructive in the world?
So I think, as you mentioned, deep fakes, it sounds quite negative because there's a word fake involved in it. But I think the idea is it should be synthetic. That is something that we are generating. I think the entertainment industry is something that is going to hugely benefit from this technology, particularly in the eyes of, creating different dialects, right? I'm an English speaker. Maybe I need a person who speaks in Hindi, but the movement of my lips might not be related to Hindi, right? So that might help. The second could be the animation of your memories. The memories that you see online of yourself, you would want to go back. How do you do that? I think deepfake, the synthetic thing. The third side of things is I completely see deepfakes as a tool of creativity. There are lots of things in life that we cannot express. There are tools at the moment where you just draw something and it creates something from that drawing. Something that is high definition, something which is real life, and so on. So it really opens up a big possibility of creativity to artists. I think if we look at from the good side of things, there are lots of benefits that can happen. But again, it needs to be controlled. It needs to be proper identification, proper tooling, proper, like you said, watermarking, and all of these tech. It really needs to feed in the whole pipeline.
Absolutely. So people are aware of the provenance of what they're looking at, what they're listening to, what they're consuming. But I suppose particularly in election season, it's a case of consumer beware. So thank you, Dipto Barman. Thank you so much for shining a light on the technology behind deepfakes and what they can be used for in election season more generally, and potentially to help people into the future. If you would like to find out more about Adapt's research in this area, you can find lots of information in the show notes and at www.adaptcentre.ie. That's it for our podcast this time around. Until next time, for myself, Claire O'Connell, Slán, and thank you for listening.
The Adapt Radio podcast is brought to you by the Adapt Centre at Trinity College Dublin. Find out more about their extensive research work at adaptcentre.ie. Join us next time to hear about more groundbreaking innovations. To get new episodes automatically, just click the follow button on your player right now. The Adapt Radio podcast is produced by dustpod.io with episodes monthly on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.